Hello, Simmers. We're here with the February recap of Season 1 in the SSHL, so let's get right to it. First off, as always, we're going to review each human control team in order of their human GM power rankings. So first off, you have the Utah Mammoth, who are currently 35, 22, and 11. Scoring-wise, Clayton Keller leads the way with 74 points, and then you have Schmaltz with 68 and Gunther with 62. That's their top three. And then in goal, you have, in 44 games played for Vejmelka, a 906 save percentage, and in 28 games played for Ingram, you have a 911 save percentage. So Utah overall has done very well throughout the season, and I would not be surprised if they manage to secure themselves a playoff spot sooner rather than later. And then you have the 33, 25, and 11 Vegas Golden Knights. Point-wise, Jack Eichel leads the way with 72 points, and then you have Barbashev with 61, and then Hertl and Dorofeyev tied with 60. And then in goal, it looks like both Hill and Korpisalo each have an 889 save percentage. Hill in 55 games played, Korpisalo in 18 games played. So Vegas' goaltending issues have been a problem all season. But as long as they can keep up the scoring, they should be able to hold themselves a playoff spot. And ranked at number 3 on the Human GM team power rankings are the Buffalo Sabres, who are 32, 27, and 9. Peterka leads the way with 58 points, and then you have Zucker with 45 and Thompson with 44. That rounds out your top three. And then in goal, you have a 941 save percentage for Reimer in 32 minutes played on the season, and then Luukkonen in 68 games played with a 905 and 5 shutouts. So Buffalo, I don't believe they're in the playoffs, but they certainly have been a pleasant surprise to see them in this position, and I would not be surprised if they were in a playoff spot by next season. And who knows, if they manage to go on the run in the last part of the season, they may just be able to squeak into the playoffs. We'll check out the standings later as we go to our 4th-ranked human team, which are the New York Rangers, who are 31, 28, and 8. So you have JT Miller leading the way in points with 61, Kreider with 57, and then Panarin with 53. And in goal, you have an 899 save percentage for Shesterkin in 53 games played, and Jonathan Quick in 15 games played with a 917. So Quick certainly pulling his weight there in the backup position, but Shesterkin, once again, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him over the offseason, as there's been no extension for him to this point. And then you have the 5th-ranked Anaheim Ducks, who are 29, 33, and 4. Currently leading the way in points for them is Terry with 49. Then you have Zegras with 47, and McTavish with 38 rounds out the top 3 in scoring for Anaheim. And then in goal, you have Dostal in 48 games played with a 901 save percentage, and Husso in 21 games played with the 898. And then sitting in 6th, you have the St. Louis Blues, who are 28, 34, and 8 on the season. Scoring-wise, leading the way for them is Kyrou with 49 points. Then you have Buchnevich with 45 and Bolduc with 37. And in goal, you have a 903 save percentage for Binnington in 53 games played, and a 901 save percentage for Hofer in 24 games played. And then sitting in 7th, you have the 26, 36, and 6 Pittsburgh Penguins. Scoring leading the way currently is Crosby with 49 points. Then you have Malkin with 41 and Tolvanen with 37. And then in goal, you have a 905 save percentage for Nedeljkovic in 30 games played, a 898 save percentage for Blomqvist in 26 games played, and an 875 for Jari in 16 games played. And sitting in 8th in the Human GM team power rankings are the 19, 45, and 3 Calgary Flames, who look like they will be in the contention for the first overall pick in the upcoming draft. You have Kadri leading the way with 39 points, Coronado with 37, and Huberdeau with 29. And then in goal, you have Wolf in 66 games played with 896 save percentage and 4 shutouts, and then Vladar in 8 games played with the 912 save percentage. So clearly a lot of work to be done here in Calgary. They do have some promising rookies, including the 20-year-old Samuel Honzek, who looks to be a 2-star consensus. And he has 18 points in his rookie season so far in 46 games played. So we'll see how he turns out for Calgary. But besides him, there's not really a whole lot going on here, it doesn't seem, in terms of young players. So it should be interesting to see what Calgary does over the offseason. And now let's take a look at the standings. So in the East, there's no human control teams in the East in the playoffs. The closest is Buffalo with 73 points currently. If Buffalo intends on making the playoffs, they're going to have to squeak into a wild card, because the Atlantic Division currently is taken up by Florida, Montreal, and Toronto, all way ahead of Buffalo. They have essentially zero chance of catching them. So they're going to have to catch one of those wild card spots where Detroit or Tampa occupies currently. But even catching that wild card might be a bit of a task. It's not impossible. Not impossible. They're only 6 points back of Tampa and Detroit. However, it is worth noting that they do have one less game to play at this point than Tampa, and then two less games to play than Detroit. So it should be interesting to see what happens with Buffalo in the wild card. We'll keep an eye on that. as we head towards April. And then in the West, you have Vegas sitting in third in the Pacific Division. And then you also have Utah sitting in third in the Central Division. So 2 human control teams in the playoffs in the West. And depending on what happens with the Eastern wildcard, we may potentially see Buffalo in the East. So I think with all that said, that'll just about wrap up the February recap. So I'll end things off here, but not before I thank the channel members. Thank you guys so much for all your support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.